Montana Territory, 1872. The fading sunlight painted the distant mountains in hues of amber and gold as Owen Fitzpatrick watched his three young children play in the yard of the dilapidated ranch house he'd just purchased. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the deed, proof that he'd gambled everything on this sprawling property nestled in Paradise Valley. The children's laughter carried on the wind, a sound that had been too rare since their mother's passing 2 years prior. "Papa, when can we go inside?" called 7-year-old Emma, her dark braids bouncing as she ran toward him. 5-year-old Thomas and 3-year-old Sarah followed, their faces smudged with the dust of travel. "Soon, sweetheart," Owen replied, tucking the papers inside his coat. "First, I need to meet with the ladies who will be helping us run this place." He hadn't told the children everything yet. How could he explain that purchasing this ranch had come with an unusual arrangement? 5 widows, all former owners of portions of this once grand estate, had sold him the consolidated property on the condition they could remain as working partners. Their husbands had all perished in a mining accident last year, leaving the women with land but insufficient means to work it properly. The clatter of approaching horses drew Owen's attention to the path leading from the western pasture. 5 women on horseback appeared, silhouetted against the sunset. As they drew nearer, Owen straightened his posture and adjusted his hat. At 35, he'd never imagined himself in such a position. A widower with 3 young children entering a business arrangement with 5 women he barely knew. The leader of the group dismounted with practiced ease. Rebecca Sullivan, a woman of perhaps 30 years, approached with confident strides. Her auburn hair was pinned practically beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and her riding skirt showed signs of honest work. "Mr. Fitzpatrick," she said, extending her hand in a businesslike manner rather than offering the customary ladylike greeting. "We wondered if you would actually show up." Owen shook her hand firmly. "A man is only as good as his word, Mrs. Sullivan." The other women dismounted, each studying him with varying degrees of curiosity and reserve. Owen noted their practical attire, divided riding skirts, sturdy boots, and no-nonsense expressions. Rebecca gestured to each woman in turn. "Allow me to introduce Miriam Steele, who manages our cattle breeding, Dorothea Sherman, who oversees the crops, Violet Stevens, our resident horse trainer, and Elizabeth Sampson, who handles the finances and household management." Owen tipped his hat respectfully to each. "Ladies, I'm pleased to make your acquaintance." Before he could continue, little Sarah broke away from her siblings and ran to the women, stopping directly in front of Rebecca. With a child's directness, she asked, "Are you going to be our new mama?" A stunned silence fell over the group. Owen felt heat rise to his face. "Sarah, that's not." Rebecca knelt to the child's level, her expression softening. "No, little one. I'm Miss Rebecca. I help run this ranch, and I'll be working with your father." Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion. "But Mama died, and Papa said we were coming to a new home with new people who would care for us." Owen stepped forward, attempting to salvage the situation. "What I meant was that these ladies would help us run the ranch, Sarah." Rebecca stood, her eyes meeting Owen's with an unreadable expression. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation inside. Evening's coming, and the children must be tired from their journey." The main house was larger than Owen had expected, a 2-story structure with enough bedrooms to accommodate them all with proper propriety. The widows occupied the east wing, while Owen and his children settled in the west. The common areas, kitchen, dining room, and parlor, would be shared. That first evening, Owen sat at the large oak dining table with the 5 women and his children, feeling oddly like a foreigner in what was now technically his home. Elizabeth had prepared a simple but hearty meal, and the children, exhausted from travel, ate quietly. "I believe we should discuss expectations," Miriam said, breaking the silence. She was the oldest of the women, perhaps in her early 40s, with streaks of gray in her dark hair. "The terms of sale were clear. We maintain our positions and living arrangements in exchange for transferring ownership." Owen nodded. "I understand the arrangement. I've brought capital to invest in expanding the operation, but I'll rely on your expertise. I was a rancher in Kansas before my wife's passing, but never on this scale." "And your children?" Dorothea asked, her round face framed by blonde curls. She had the gentle demeanor of someone accustomed to nurturing things. "What arrangements have you made for their care while you work?" Owen hesitated. This had been his greatest concern. I had hoped to hire a governess eventually, but for now, I can mind the little ones during the day, Violet offered. She was the youngest of the widows, barely past 25, with a lean, athletic build and quick eyes. I work with the horses in the morning and evening, but midday is quieter. That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose. It's not an imposition, Rebecca interjected. We're partners now. The children are part of the ranch. We'll all help. Emma, who had been listening carefully to the adults' conversation, spoke up, like having 5 mamas instead of one. Owen nearly choked on his coffee. Emma, these ladies are not. They're our business partners, but the damage was done. Thomas clapped his hands excitedly. 5 mamas. I like having 5 mamas. The women exchanged glances that ranged from amusement to discomfort. Rebecca cleared her throat. Children, we're not your mothers. You had a mother who loved you very much, I'm sure. Sarah's bottom lip trembled. But she's in heaven now. Papa says we can't see her anymore. A heavy silence fell over the table. Owen felt a familiar helplessness, the same he'd experienced when trying to explain death to his children after Caroline's passing. Elizabeth, who had remained quiet until now, reached out and gently touched Sarah's hand. Your mama will always be your mama, even from heaven. But perhaps you could think of us as your aunts. Would that be all right? Sarah considered this for a moment, then shook her head firmly. No, you're all mamas. Different mamas for different things. Owen opened his mouth to correct his daughter, but Rebecca caught his eye and gave a subtle shake of her head. Later, when the children had been put to bed, she found him on the porch, staring at the star-filled Montana sky. Let them call us what they need to for now, she said quietly, leaning against the porch railing. Children heal in their own ways. It's not proper, Owen replied. People will talk. Rebecca laughed softly. Mr. Fitzpatrick, 5 widows living with a single father on an isolated ranch is already enough to set tongues wagging from here to Helena. The children's names for us is the least of our concerns. Spring melted into summer, and the ranch began to transform under their combined efforts. Owen's capital allowed for repairs to fences and outbuildings, the purchase of additional breeding stock, and improved irrigation for Dorothea's crops. The children thrived in the open spaces, developing their own relationships with each of the women. Miriam, with her no-nonsense attitude and wealth of practical knowledge, became teaching mama to the children. She showed them how to identify different plants and animals, taught them to read tracts, and began their education in basic arithmetic and reading during rainy afternoons. Elizabeth, meticulous and gentle, was kitchen mama, involving the children in cooking and baking, teaching them songs as they worked, and ensuring they had clean clothes and well-kept rooms. Dorothea, who tended the gardens and orchards, became garden mama, letting the children help plant seeds and harvest vegetables, always explaining the miracles of growing things with infectious enthusiasm. Violet, energetic and fearless, was horse mama, teaching even little Sarah to sit properly on a gentle mare and leading the older children on rides across the property. And Rebecca, who seemed to oversee everything with calm competence, became simply Mama Becca, the one they sought when they had scraped knees or nightmares, the one whose approval seemed to matter most. Owen watched this development with a mixture of gratitude and unease. He was thankful for the women's care of his children, but concerned about the unusual family structure they were creating. More troubling still were his growing feelings for Rebecca, feelings that went well beyond appreciation or professional respect. One evening in late July, Owen found Rebecca alone in the barn, treating a wound on one of the draft horses. The lantern light cast a warm glow over her features as she worked, speaking softly to the animal. He stood watching for a moment, struck by the competence of her hands and the gentleness in her voice. "Do you need something, Mr. Fitzpatrick?" she asked without looking up. "Owen," he corrected. "After 4 months, I think we can use Christian names, don't you?" She glanced at him briefly. "Owen, then, hand me that salve, would you?" He passed her the tin of ointment, their fingers brushing momentarily. "I wanted to thank you for everything you've done for the children. They're good children. You've raised them well. Their mother deserves most of the credit," he said softly. Rebecca finished bandaging the horse's leg and straightened. "You must have loved her very much." "I did. Caroline was everything to me." Owen leaned against a post, memories washing over him. When she died, I thought my world had ended. If not for the children. I understand, Rebecca said, wiping her hands on a cloth. When Daniel died in the mine collapse, I wanted to follow him. But there was the land, the other women who depended on me. You were the one who organized the widows to maintain the ranch. She nodded. We had all lost our husbands in the same accident. None of us had family nearby. It made sense to combine our resources. And then I came along and upset your arrangement. You've improved it, she corrected him. We were barely holding on before you came with your investment. Now we have a chance at real success. Owen stepped closer. Rebecca, I've been wondering. That is, I've noticed. He stopped, frustrated by his inability to articulate his thoughts. She looked at him with those direct blue eyes. What is it, Owen? The children aren't the only ones growing attached to you, he said finally. To all of you, he added hastily, but especially to you. Rebecca's expression remained calm, but he noticed her hands tighten on the cloth she held. Attachment is natural when people work closely together. This is more than that, and I think you know it. She turned away, busying herself with putting away the medical supplies. I'm not sure what you expect me to say. Say you feel it too, he said quietly. Or tell me I'm a fool and to keep my distance. Rebecca faced him again, her expression carefully controlled. You're not a fool, Owen. But this is complicated. We have a business arrangement. The others depend on me, on us, to keep things running smoothly. And if there were no business, no arrangement? If we were just a man and a woman? But we're not, she said firmly. We're partners with responsibilities. To this land, to the other women, to your children. Owen nodded slowly, accepting her boundary. I understand. Forgive my presumption. As he turned to leave, Rebecca called after him. Owen, give it time. We're all still learning how to be together in this new way. It wasn't a rejection, he realized. It was a caution, a request for patience. He could grant her that. By early autumn, the ranch was flourishing. Their first cattle sale had brought in a handsome profit, and Dorothea's harvest was abundant enough to see them through winter with plenty to spare. The children had settled into a comfortable routine, dividing their time between lessons with Miriam, chores with Elizabeth, gardening with Dorothea, riding with Violet, and following Rebecca everywhere she would allow. The arrangement that had seemed so unusual at first had evolved into something that worked, though it remained unconventional by any standard. In town, they attracted curious glances and occasional whispers, but the success of the ranch spoke for itself, and gradually, acceptance, if not full understanding, spread through the community. For Owen, the greatest challenge remained his feelings for Rebecca. He had respected her request for time, maintaining a friendly but professional relationship. Yet he caught her watching him sometimes when she thought he wouldn't notice, the same longing in her eyes that he felt in his heart. On a crisp October morning, disaster struck without warning. Owen and Rebecca were inspecting fence lines in the north pasture when they spotted smoke rising from the direction of the main house. Fire, Rebecca gasped, already turning her horse. They rode hard, fear propelling them. As they crested the hill overlooking the ranch complex, they saw flames engulfing the barn. Figures moved frantically around the burning structure, the women and several ranch hands working to control the blaze and evacuate the animals. The children, Owen shouted, panic seizing him as he spurred his horse forward. When they reached the chaotic scene, Violet rushed to meet them. The children are safe. They're with Elizabeth in the house, she reported, her face streaked with soot. We got all the horses out, but we're losing the hay store and equipment. Owen's relief about his children was tempered by the realization of what this meant for the ranch. Their entire winter feed supply was in that barn, along with tools and equipment they couldn't easily replace. For hours, they fought the fire, forming bucket lines from the well and creek. By mid-afternoon, the barn was nothing but smoldering ruins. Exhausted and filthy, they gathered in the kitchen where Elizabeth had prepared coffee and food. How did it start? Owen asked, his voice hoarse from smoke. Dorothea shook her head. No one knows for certain. Miriam thinks it might have been a spark from the forge. One of the hands was repairing tools this morning. It doesn't matter now, Miriam said grimly. What matters is what we do next. Without that hay, we'll lose half the herd by spring. A heavy silence fell over the group. They had worked so hard, come so far, and now this setback threatened everything. Rebecca, who had been standing by the window, turned to face them. We'll rebuild. Better than before. Owen looked at her, admiring her determination even as he wondered at its practicality. With what money, Rebecca? We put everything into the stock and crops. We'll find a way, she insisted. We can sell some of the cattle now, before winter. At a fraction of their value, Violet pointed out. We could take a loan from the bank in Helena, Elizabeth suggested. Miriam shook her head. No bank will loan to women, and they'll be suspicious of lending more to Owen when we've just had this loss. The discussion continued, each suggestion meeting a practical obstacle. Owen felt the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. These women had trusted him with their future, and now everything was in jeopardy. Later that night, unable to sleep, Owen walked outside to survey the damage in the moonlight. The charred skeleton of the barn stood as a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes could change. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Rebecca approaching, wrapped in a shawl against the night chill. You should be resting, he said. So should you. She came to stand beside him, looking at the ruins. We will get through this, Owen. How can you be so certain? She turned to face him, her expression resolute in the moonlight. Because we must. For the children. For all of us. Owen felt a surge of emotion, admiration, affection, and something deeper. Without thinking, he reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Rebecca, today when I saw that smoke, my first thought was for the children. But my second was for you. He paused, gathering courage. I know you asked for time, and I've tried to be patient. But life is unpredictable and sometimes short. I don't want to waste any more of it pretending I'm not in love with you. Rebecca's eyes widened, but she remained silent, her hand still in his. I'm not asking for promises, he continued. Just acknowledgement that what's between us is real and deserves a chance to grow. For a long moment, she said nothing, and Owen feared he had overstepped again. Then she squeezed his hand. I've been afraid, she admitted softly. Afraid of caring for someone who could be taken from me again. Afraid of disrupting what we've built here. Afraid of what the others would think. And now I'm still afraid, she said with a small smile. But I'm more afraid of denying what I feel. She took a deep breath. I love you too, Owen. I think I have almost from the beginning. The admission, so simple yet so profound, washed over him like a wave. He drew her closer, and when she didn't resist, he lowered his head and kissed her gently. It was a tentative kiss at first, then deepening as she responded, her arms moving around his neck. When they finally parted, Owen kept her close, his forehead resting against hers. What do we do now? Rebecca laughed softly. First, we rebuild the barn. Then, perhaps, we can think about building something else. News of the fire spread quickly through the territory, and with it came an unexpected blessing. Neighboring ranchers, many of whom had been skeptical of the unusual arrangement at the Fitzpatrick Ranch, arrived with wagons of hay, lumber, and offers of help. It seemed their hard work and success had earned more respect than they'd realized. The barn raising became a community event. Men from miles around came to help, while women brought food and entertained the children. Owen was moved by the generosity, and the other widows seemed equally surprised by the outpouring of support. I never thought they accepted us, Dorothea commented as she and Rebecca arranged food on tables set up in the yard. Perhaps they didn't at first, Rebecca replied. But we've proven ourselves. As the new barn took shape, so did Owen and Rebecca's relationship. They were discreet, mindful of propriety and the potential reactions of the other women. But their feelings were evident to those who knew them well. One evening, as Owen returned from inspecting the day's progress on the barn, he found Miriam waiting for him on the porch. A word, Mr. Fitzpatrick, she said, her tone making it clear this was not a request. Owen followed her to a bench away from the house, apprehension building. Of all the widows, Miriam was the most formidable, and her opinion carried weight with the others. I'll be direct, she said once they were seated. Your feelings for Rebecca are obvious, as are hers for you. Owen didn't bother denying it. I respect her greatly, Mrs. Steele. And yes, my affections run deeper than respect. And your intentions? Are honorable, he assured her. If she'll have me, I'd like to marry her. Miriam studied him for a long moment. And what of our arrangement? The other widows and I sold our shares with the understanding we would maintain our positions and homes. That wouldn't change, Owen said firmly. This is your home. The children adore all of you. I wouldn't dream of altering that. Some might find it unusual, a married couple living with 4 other women. Owen smiled slightly. This entire arrangement has been unusual from the start, Mrs. Steele. But it works. For all of us, and especially for my children. Miriam's stern expression softened slightly. They do seem to be thriving. She paused. Rebecca deserves happiness. She's carried so much responsibility, looked after all of us since the accident. I want to share that burden with her, not add to it. Miriam nodded slowly. Then you have my blessing, for whatever that's worth. And I suspect you'll have the others as well. She rose to leave, then added, But Mr. Fitzpatrick? If you hurt her, remember that I know which plants are poisonous and how to use them. Owen laughed, recognizing the threat contained real affection. I'll keep that in mind, Mrs. Steele. By December, the new barn stood complete, larger and more efficiently designed than its predecessor. The hay donations had been sufficient to see their reduced herd through winter, and plans were already in place for expanding again in spring. The setback had been real, but thanks to community support and their own determination, it would not prove fatal to their enterprise. Christmas approached, bringing with it a festive atmosphere to the ranch. The house was decorated with pine boughs and handmade ornaments. The children were excited, helping Elizabeth bake cookies and pestering Violet to take them to the forest to find the perfect tree. Owen, with the discreet support of the other widows, had been planning a surprise. On Christmas Eve, after the children were nestled in bed dreaming of the next day's festivities, he asked Rebecca to join him for a walk. It's freezing outside, she protested, though she was already reaching for her coat and shawl. Just to the new barn, he promised. I want to show you something. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliantly visible in the black Montana sky. Their breath formed clouds in the frigid air as they crossed the yard to the barn. Owen opened the door, revealing the interior lit with dozens of lanterns hanging from the rafters. In the center of the open space was a small table set with a white cloth, 2 place settings, and a bottle of wine. Rebecca gasped softly. Owen, what is this? Christmas Eve dinner, he said, guiding her inside. Just for us. He helped her remove her coat and held her chair as she sat, still looking around in wonder. How did you manage this? Who's watching the children? The other mamas are on guard, he said with a smile. This was their idea, actually. Dorothea cooked, Elizabeth arranged everything. Violet kept the children distracted all day, and Miriam. He paused. Well, Miriam threatened me with bodily harm if I didn't make this perfect for you. Rebecca laughed, her eyes bright with emotion. They knew about this. All of them. They did. They've known about us for some time, it seems. Owen poured wine into their glasses. They approve, by the way. I know. They've been dropping hints for weeks. She took a sip of wine, studying him over the rim of her glass. So this is just dinner? Not exactly. Owen reached into his pocket and placed a small box on the table between them. I had planned a fancy speech, but now that we're here, I find simple truth works better. He opened the box, revealing a gold ring set with a small diamond. I love you, Rebecca Sullivan. Will you marry me? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and touched the ring with trembling fingers. Are you certain? This life, 5 widows, 3 children calling everyone mama. It's not what most men dream of. It's more than I ever dared to dream, he said sincerely. A family built on choice rather than just blood. People who care for each other and work together. What could be better than that? Rebecca smiled through her tears. When you put it that way. She took his hand in hers. Yes, Owen Fitzpatrick. I will marry you. Owen slipped the ring onto her finger, then leaned across the table to kiss her, his heart full to bursting. They were married on New Year's Day, 1873, in the parlor of the ranch house. The minister from town performed the ceremony, and though he raised an eyebrow at the unusual household arrangement, he offered no comment beyond his official blessing. Emma served as flower girl, scattering petals from Dorothea's dried summer blooms. Thomas carried the rings on a small cushion Elizabeth had sewn for the occasion. Sarah, not to be left out, appointed herself happiness fairy, waving a decorated stick over the proceedings that Violet had helped her create. Miriam stood as Rebecca's witness, while a neighboring rancher who had become a good friend stood for Owen. The other widows, resplendent in their best dresses, formed a semicircle around the couple as they exchanged vows. I promise to build with you, Owen said, holding Rebecca's hands in his. Not just barns and fences, but a life, a family, a legacy. I promise to stand with you, Rebecca responded, her voice clear and confident. Through fire and snow, abundance and hardship, joy and sorrow. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, cheers erupted from the small gathering. The children rushed forward, surrounding the couple in a group embrace. Does this mean Mama Becca is just Mama now? Thomas asked, his face serious. Rebecca knelt to his level. I'll be whatever you want to call me, Thomas. But your real mama will always be your mama, even from heaven. I know, he said solemnly. But I think she sent you to us. And the other mamas too. Owen felt his throat tighten with emotion. Out of the mouths of babes came wisdom that adults sometimes struggled to grasp. The celebration continued well into the evening, with music and dancing and more food than even their hungry ranch hands could consume. As night fell, the guests departed, leaving the unconventional family to their new beginning. Later, as Rebecca and Owen stood on the porch looking at the star-filled sky, she rested her head against his shoulder. Are you happy? He asked, his arm around her waist. More than I thought possible after Daniel died, she admitted. It's different, this happiness. Wiser, perhaps. We've both learned that life can change in an instant, Owen said. It makes the good moments more precious. And what happens now? She asked. How does this work day to day? Owen considered the question. I suppose we keep doing what we've been doing. Working together, caring for the land and the children, supporting each other. But now we do it as husband and wife, sharing everything. And the others? They remain exactly as they are, vital parts of this family we've created. He turned to face her. Does that satisfy you, Mrs. Fitzpatrick? Rebecca smiled, reaching up to touch his face. Completely, Mr. Fitzpatrick. Spring 1880, the Paradise Valley Ranch, as it had come to be known throughout Montana Territory, flourished in the years that followed. The unusual family structure that had raised eyebrows initially was now accepted as one of the ranch's distinctive features, along with its prize-winning Hereford cattle and Dorothea's acclaimed apple orchard. Owen and Rebecca had added 2 children of their own to the family, Daniel, now 6, and Caroline, 4, named for those they had lost. The older children had grown too. Emma at 15 was becoming a young lady with Miriam's practical intelligence and Rebecca's quiet strength. Thomas at 13 showed promise as a natural horseman under Violet's tutelage, and Sarah, 11, had developed Dorothea's green thumb and Elizabeth's talent for music. The 5 widows, though Rebecca was a widow no longer, remained integral to the ranch and family. Each had found her place and purpose, contributing her unique skills to their shared enterprise. They were still called Mama by all the children, with various prefixes to distinguish them, a practice that had become so natural that even visitors to the ranch adopted it without comment. On a warm May evening, the extended family gathered on the broad porch that now wrapped around the expanded main house. Owen sat with Rebecca on the swing, watching as Elizabeth led the younger children in a game while Miriam and Dorothea shelled peas for dinner. Violet was recounting a tale of her latest horse-training triumph to an attentive Thomas, while Emma read quietly nearby. 8 years, Owen mused, squeezing his wife's hand. Sometimes it seems like yesterday that I arrived here with 3 frightened children and a deed I wasn't sure was worth the paper it was written on. And now, Rebecca prompted, leaning against his shoulder. Owen surveyed the scene before him. The thriving ranch, the beautiful land, the unconventional but loving family they had built together. Now I know it was the best decision I ever made, he said simply. Though I admit, when Sarah first suggested you all be Mama, I nearly had an apoplexy. Rebecca laughed. You weren't the only one. I remember Miriam's face. But the children needed what they needed. And so did we, it turns out. Owen watched as Daniel climbed onto Violet's lap, demanding his own horse story. I never imagined this life, but I can't imagine any other now. Nor can I, Rebecca agreed. She looked toward the others, the women who had become sisters to her, the children who belonged to all of them in different ways. We made something special here, didn't we? We did, Owen confirmed. A single father bought a ranch with 5 widows, and somehow we all became a family. Rebecca smiled and kissed him softly. The best kind of family, one built on choice and love. As the sun set over Paradise Valley, casting long golden shadows across the land they had nurtured together, Owen Fitzpatrick knew with absolute certainty that he was the richest man in Montana Territory. not in gold or cattle or acres, but in the precious currency of love and belonging that filled every corner of their unconventional home.